The blood on Lily Emerson's hands wouldn't wash away completely, no matter how hard she scrubbed, and she wondered if the crimson stain from the saloon floor would ever truly leave her skin, or if she was marked forever by the life she'd been forced into since arriving in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, in the spring of 1878. She was 20 years old and already felt ancient, her knees aching from hours spent on the rough wooden planks of the Silver Dollar Saloon, her fingers raw and cracked from the lye soap and cold water. The bucket beside her was murky with diluted blood, from a fight that had broken out earlier that evening between two miners arguing over a card game. One man had lost 3 teeth and the other a chunk of his ear, and Lily had watched it all from her corner, knowing she'd be the one cleaning up the mess when the dust settled. "You missed a spot," called out Sal, the saloon keeper, a woman with hard eyes and harder hands who'd given Lily this job when she'd stumbled into town 6 months ago with nothing but the clothes on her back and empty pockets. "Right there by the bar rail." Lily bit back the sharp retort that rose to her lips and dunked her scrub brush back into the bucket, crawling across the floor to the spot Sal had indicated. The saloon had cleared out for the night, save for a few stragglers nursing their final drinks before heading to whatever beds or bedrolls awaited them. The piano sat silent in the corner, and the girls who worked upstairs had already retired with their last customers or gone to their own rooms to count their earnings and nurse their bruises. This wasn't the life Lily had imagined for herself. She'd come west from Ohio after her parents died of fever, following the promise of opportunity and new beginnings that everyone talked about in hushed, excited voices. But opportunity hadn't found her. Instead, she'd found herself stranded in Sioux Falls when the family she'd been traveling with had moved on without her, deciding she was too much of a burden after she'd fallen ill for a week with influenza. The scrubbing was honest work, Sal had told her, even if it paid barely enough to cover the tiny room Lily rented above the general store and the meager meals she could afford. It was better than the alternative, which Sal had made abundantly clear. The girls upstairs made good money, she'd said, and there was always room for one more if Lily changed her mind. But Lily hadn't changed her mind, not in 6 months, though she knew Sal was growing impatient with her stubbornness. The sound of bootsteps on the boardwalk outside made Lily glance up, her hand still working the brush in methodical circles. The door swung open, bringing in a gust of cool April air that smelled of rain and prairie grass. The man who entered was tall, with broad shoulders that filled the doorframe, and he moved with the easy confidence of someone who knew exactly who he was and where he belonged in the world. Lily had seen plenty of cowboys and drifters in her time at the Silver Dollar, but something about this one made her pause in her scrubbing. Maybe it was the way he removed his hat as he stepped inside, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, or the way his eyes swept the room with a careful assessment that spoke of intelligence rather than looking for trouble. He was young, probably not much older than her own 20 years, with a face that would have been handsome if not for the serious set of his jaw and the weariness in his eyes. "We're closing up," Sal called from behind the bar, though her tone had shifted from the harsh one she'd used with Lily to something almost pleasant. "But I suppose I can pour one more drink for a paying customer." The cowboy nodded his thanks and crossed to the bar, his boots making hollow sounds on the floor Lily had just cleaned. She moved aside to let him pass, keeping her eyes down as she'd learned to do. Men didn't like to be stared at by saloon girls, even ones who only scrubbed floors, and it was safer to make herself invisible. "Whiskey," the cowboy said, his voice deep and measured. "And information if you're selling it." Depends on what kind of information, Sal replied, pouring a generous measure into a glass. And who's asking? Name's Benjamin Lawson. I'm looking for someone to help run a boarding house I just bought on the edge of town. Clean work, respectable pay, room and board included. Someone told me you might know of a woman looking for that kind of position. Lily's hand stilled on the scrub brush. She didn't dare look up, but every fiber of her being was focused on the conversation happening above her head. Sal was quiet for a moment, and Lily could almost feel the weight of her consideration. Might be I know someone, she said slowly. Though I'd hate to lose good help. This girl here keeps my floors cleaner than they've been in years. Lily's heart hammered in her chest. Was Sal actually considering letting her go? Or was this some kind of test? Could I speak to her? Benjamin asked, and now Lily had no choice but to look up. She raised her eyes slowly, taking in scuffed boots, worn denim pants, a leather belt with a simple buckle, a shirt that had seen better days but was clean and mended with careful stitches, and finally the face of Benjamin Lawson. His eyes were blue, she realized, a deep blue like the sky just after sunset, and they were looking directly at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I'm Lily Emerson," she said, her voice rougher than she'd intended from disuse. She didn't talk much during her days at the Silver Dollar. There wasn't much point. Benjamin took a few steps closer and then, to her surprise, crouched down so they were at eye level. "Miss Emerson, I apologize for the awkward introduction. I recently purchased the old Morrison place at the north end of town. It's a big house, too big for one person, and I'm converting it into a boarding house. I need someone to help manage it, someone who can cook and clean and handle the day-to-day operations while I continue working my cattle ranch about 5 miles outside town. It's honest work, respectable work, and I'd pay $30 a month plus room and board in a private bedroom with a lock on the door. You'd have Sundays off and control over the household accounts for supplies and such. $30 a month." Lily currently made $8 a month scrubbing floors, and half of that went to her room rent. $30 with room and board was more money than she'd ever dreamed of having. "Why me?" she asked, searching his face for signs of deceit or ulterior motives. "You don't know anything about me. I know you're here scrubbing floors at midnight instead of doing the other work available in a saloon," Benjamin said quietly. "That tells me you've got principles. I know these floors are cleaner than any saloon floor I've ever seen, which tells me you take pride in your work even when it's thankless. And Mrs. Chen at the general store told me you always pay your rent on time and never complain about the mice in your room or the leaky roof, which tells me you're steady and don't make trouble. That's enough for me to offer you a chance. The rest you can prove with time." Lily looked at Sal, who was watching the exchange with narrowed eyes. "If you want to go, go," Sal said with a shrug. "But don't come crying back to me when you figure out what he really wants from you. Men don't offer wages like that for just cleaning and cooking." A flush of anger swept through Lily, hot and sudden. "Miss Sal, I've scrubbed your floors for 6 months and never complained once. I've cleaned up blood and vomit and things worse than that, and I've never asked for a day off or a raise. I've never stolen from you or lied to you. If I want to take a different position, I'm free to do so." "Course you are," Sal said, but her tone had gone cold. "Just remember what I said." Lily stood up, her knees protesting the sudden movement. She was still holding the scrub brush, and she looked down at it for a long moment before setting it carefully in the bucket. 6 months of her life had gone into scrubbing these floors, 6 months of watching the world go by from her knees, 6 months of wondering if this was all there would ever be. "When would you want me to start?" she asked Benjamin. He stood as well, and she had to tilt her head back to look at him. He was easily 6 feet tall, maybe more. "Tomorrow, if you're willing. I understand if you need time to think about it, but I'm hoping to have the first boarders moving in by the end of the week, and there's a lot of work to be done before then." "I don't need time to think about it," Lily said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "I'll take the position. Thank you, Mr. Lawson." "Benjamin," he corrected with a small smile. "If we're going to be working together, you should call me Benjamin." "Then you should call me Lily." He nodded, and there was something in his eyes that made her breath catch, a warmth that she hadn't expected. "Lily it is. Can you meet me at the Morrison place tomorrow morning? It's the big yellow house at the end of Pine Street. Can't miss it." "I'll be there at dawn," Lily promised. Benjamin finished his whiskey in one swallow, paid Sal, and headed for the door. He paused with his hand on the frame and looked back at Lily. "Bring whatever belongings you have. You'll be living at the boarding house starting tomorrow." After he left, the silence in the saloon seemed heavier than before. Lily could feel Sal's disapproval like a physical weight, but she didn't care. For the first time in 6 months, she felt something like hope flickering in her chest. "You're a fool," Sal said finally. "But I suppose fools are born every minute. Just don't say I didn't warn you." Lily didn't respond. She picked up the bucket and carried it to the back door, dumping the dirty water into the alley. The night air was cool and clean, and she stood there for a moment, letting it wash over her. "Tomorrow," she thought. "Tomorrow everything changes." She finished her last night at the Silver Dollar in silence, washing out the bucket and storing the cleaning supplies in their proper places. Sal had already gone upstairs, and the few remaining drunks had stumbled out into the night, leaving Lily alone in the big, empty room. She took one last look around, memorizing the scarred bar, the crooked painting of a mountain landscape, the threadbare curtains that had once been red but had faded to a dusty pink. This place had been her life for half a year, but she felt no sadness at leaving it behind. The walk back to her rented room above the general store took only a few minutes. Sioux Falls was small enough that everything was close together. The buildings clustered along the Big Sioux River like children huddling for warmth. The town had maybe 300 permanent residents, though that number swelled during cattle drives and when the railroad brought in temporary workers. Her room was exactly as she'd left it that morning, a small square space with a narrow bed, a washstand, a trunk for her belongings, and nothing else. She'd made no attempt to decorate or make it feel like home because it had never felt like anything other than a place to sleep. Now, packing her belongings took less than 15 minutes. She owned 2 dresses besides the one she was wearing, both faded and mended in multiple places. She had undergarments, 2 pairs of stockings with holes in the heels, a shawl her mother had knit, a hairbrush with half the bristles missing, and a small leather-bound Bible that had belonged to her father. That was the sum total of her earthly possessions. She placed everything carefully in the trunk, then lay down on the bed fully clothed, knowing she wouldn't sleep. Her mind was racing with thoughts of tomorrow, of the yellow house at the end of Pine Street, of Benjamin Lawson with his serious eyes and unexpected kindness. She'd learned to be suspicious of kindness, especially from men, but there had been something genuine in the way he'd crouched down to speak to her, meeting her at her level rather than forcing her to crane her neck to look up at him. The hours crawled by, marked by the distant sound of the river and the occasional bark of a dog. When the first gray light of dawn began to filter through her small window, Lily rose and washed her face and hands in the cold water from the pitcher on her washstand. She braided her dark blonde hair and pinned it up, then put on her best dress, which wasn't saying much but at least had no visible stains or tears. Carrying her trunk was awkward, but she'd done harder things. She left the key to her room on the washstand with a note for Mrs. Chen, thanking her for the accommodation. Then she stepped out into the morning, closing the door on that chapter of her life. Pine Street was easy to find, running north from the main part of town toward the open prairie. The yellow house stood at the very end, exactly as Benjamin had described. It was big, 3 stories tall with a wraparound porch and gingerbread trim that needed painting. The yard was overgrown with weeds, and several shutters hung crooked on their hinges, but the bones of the house were good. Lily could see that even from the street. Benjamin was already there, sitting on the porch steps with a cup of coffee in his hands. He stood when he saw her, setting the cup aside, and came down to help her with the trunk without being asked. "You travel light," he observed, carrying it up the steps as though it weighed nothing. "I don't have much," Lily admitted, following him into the house. The interior smelled of dust and disuse, but it was spacious and well built. The entry hall had a grand staircase leading to the upper floors, and doorways opened off to what looked like a parlor and dining room. Benjamin led her through to the kitchen at the back of the house. A large room with a cast-iron stove, a sink with a hand pump, and enough counter space to prepare meals for a small army. "Your room is just off the kitchen here," Benjamin said, opening a door to reveal a modest bedroom with a real bed, a dresser, a wardrobe, and a window that looked out onto the backyard. "It has a lock, like I promised. You're the only one with a key besides me, and I'll only use mine in case of emergency." He handed her a key, and she closed her fingers around it, feeling the weight of it, the promise of privacy and safety it represented. She'd never had a locked door before, not in the boarding house where she'd grown up in Ohio, not in the wagon on the journey west, not in the tiny room above the general store. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion she didn't want to show. Benjamin seemed to understand that she needed a moment. "I'll give you time to settle in. When you're ready, come find me and I'll show you the rest of the house and we can discuss what needs to be done." After he left, Lily set her trunk at the foot of the bed and sat down on the mattress, testing it. It was real horsehair and cotton, not straw, and it gave slightly under her weight without sagging. The sheets were clean and smelled of soap and sunshine. The pillow was full and soft. This bed alone was worth more than every place she'd slept in the past 6 months combined. She unpacked her few belongings, hanging her dresses in the wardrobe and placing her undergarments in the dresser. The Bible went on the small table beside the bed. The shawl she draped over the back of the single chair in the room. When everything was put away, the wardrobe and dresser still looked empty, but Lily felt a surge of determination. She would earn enough money to buy more dresses, more stockings without holes, maybe even a nice hat for church on Sundays. She found Benjamin upstairs on the 2nd floor, making notes on a piece of paper as he walked from room to room. There were 8 bedrooms on this floor, he explained, each one large enough for a bed, a dresser, and a washstand. The 3rd floor had 6 smaller rooms that would be cheaper to rent. There were 2 water closets, one on each upper floor, which was a luxury many boarding houses couldn't offer. "Most of the furniture is already here," Benjamin said, showing her a room that held a bed frame, a dresser with a cracked mirror, and a straight-backed chair. "The Morrisons left in a hurry when they moved to California, sold me the house and everything in it for a good price. We'll need to clean everything thoroughly, air out the mattresses, wash the linens. Some things need repair, but most of it is serviceable." "How did you come to buy this place?" Lily asked, curiosity overcoming her usual reticence. "If you don't mind my asking." Benjamin leaned against the doorframe, his expression thoughtful. "My father died last year and left me the ranch and a bit of money. The ranch does well enough, but I wanted something more, something in town. I grew up in Texas, moved up here 3 years ago looking for better grazing land. My father followed a year later, but his heart gave out on him. He was only 45, but he'd lived a hard life. He paused, and Lily could see the grief still fresh in his eyes. He always said a man should invest his money in things that last, things that help people. A boarding house seemed like the right choice. Sioux Falls is growing and people need clean, safe places to stay. "I'm sorry about your father," Lily said softly. "Thank you. What about you? How did you end up in Sioux Falls?" It was only fair to share her own story, Lily supposed, since he'd shared his. "My parents died of fever 2 years ago in Ohio. I had no other family, so I joined up with a family heading west, worked for them in exchange for passage. But I got sick crossing Iowa, and they decided I was more trouble than I was worth. They left me here when I was still weak from the illness, took off one morning while I was sleeping. I had no money, no skills except general housework, so I took the only job I could find." Benjamin's expression darkened. "They abandoned you while you were ill. That's unconscionable." Lily shrugged, trying to appear unbothered by the memory, though it still stung. "People do what they have to do to survive out here. I don't blame them exactly. I slowed them down." "That's no excuse," Benjamin said firmly. "But their loss is my gain, I suppose. You're here now and we have work to do." They spent the rest of the day cleaning. Benjamin proved to be a tireless worker, hauling mattresses out to the porch to air in the sunshine, repairing broken bed frames with tools he'd brought from his ranch, even scrubbing floors alongside Lily without complaint. It was strange at first, working side by side with him, but Lily found herself relaxing as the hours passed. He talked while they worked, telling her about his plans for the boarding house. He wanted to offer weekly and monthly rates, provide 2 meals a day included in the price, keep the place respectable and family-friendly. He'd already put advertisements in the newspaper and on flyers posted around town, and he'd had several inquiries from railroad workers and merchants looking for longer-term accommodation. Lily found herself contributing ideas, suggesting a sitting room where boarders could gather in the evenings, proposing a simple but hearty menu that would be economical to prepare in large quantities. Benjamin listened to her suggestions with genuine interest, nodding and making notes, treating her opinions as valuable rather than dismissing them. As the sun began to set, they took a break on the front porch, sharing water from the pump and eating bread and cheese that Benjamin had brought. Lily's back ached and her hands were sore, but it was a good ache, the kind that came from productive work rather than hopeless drudgery. "You've done excellent work today," Benjamin said, stretching his long legs out in front of him. "I know it's hard labor, but I appreciate your effort." "It's satisfying work," Lily replied honestly. "I can see the progress we're making. At the saloon, the floors would just get dirty again the next day. This feels like we're building something that will last." "That's exactly it," Benjamin said, his face lighting up with enthusiasm. "That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Build something that lasts, something that matters." Their eyes met, and Lily felt a flutter of something in her chest, something she hadn't felt in a long time. She looked away quickly, focusing on the piece of bread in her hands. Over the next 3 days, they fell into a rhythm. Benjamin would arrive each morning just after dawn, and they would work until evening, stopping only for brief meals. The house slowly transformed under their combined efforts. Floors were scrubbed, windows washed until they sparkled, furniture polished and repaired. Lily discovered she had a knack for making the rooms feel welcoming, arranging the simple furnishings in ways that maximized space and comfort. Benjamin was easy to work with, patient and fair, quick to laugh at small mishaps and generous with his praise. He never once made her feel uncomfortable or threatened, always maintaining a respectful distance, always treating her as an equal partner in the enterprise. Lily found herself looking forward to his arrival each morning, found herself listening for the sound of his boots on the porch steps. On the fourth day, their first boarder arrived, a railroad surveyor named Mr. Patterson who needed a room for 2 weeks. He was a quiet man in his 50s, and he seemed pleased with the clean room and the promise of regular meals. Lily cooked her first dinner for the boarding house that evening, a simple stew with fresh bread, and Mr. Patterson complimented her cooking with such sincerity that she felt a warm glow of pride. By the end of the first week, they had 4 boarders, and by the end of the second week, 7. The house began to feel alive with the comings and goings of its residents. Lily managed the daily operations with growing confidence, rising early to prepare breakfast, packing lunches for those who needed them, cooking dinner in the evening. She kept the common areas clean, changed linens, handled complaints and requests with diplomatic efficiency. Benjamin came by every few days to check on things, to help with any heavy repairs or problems Lily couldn't handle on her own, and to go over the accounts. The boarding house was turning a profit almost immediately, which seemed to please him immensely. "You're doing remarkable work," he told her one evening as they sat in the kitchen reviewing the week's expenses. "The boarders all speak highly of you. Mr. Patterson told me yesterday that this is the best boarding house he's stayed in across the entire Western Territory." Lily felt her cheeks warm at the praise. "I enjoy the work. It's good to feel useful, to feel like I'm doing something worthwhile." "You're doing more than something worthwhile," Benjamin said, his blue eyes serious. "You're making a real difference. Some of these men are far from home, working hard jobs, living lonely lives. Coming back to a clean room and a hot meal, being greeted by someone who treats them with kindness and respect, that matters more than you might think." "You make it sound almost noble," Lily said with a small smile. "I'm just cooking and cleaning." "There's nothing just about it," Benjamin insisted. "Honest work done well is always noble, no matter what form it takes." As spring turned to early summer, the boarding house became even more successful. Word spread about the clean rooms, good food, and fair prices. And soon Lily was turning away potential boarders because every room was full. She suggested to Benjamin that they might consider renting out the attic space, and he agreed, spending a weekend converting it into 2 small but comfortable rooms. During this time, Lily came to know Benjamin better. He would often stay for dinner when he came by, sitting in the kitchen while she cooked, telling her stories about his ranch, about the cattle drives he'd been on as a younger man, about his dreams for the future. He wanted to expand his herd, he said, maybe buy more land. He wanted to make something of himself, prove that he could build on the foundation his father had laid. Lily shared her own dreams hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence as she realized Benjamin actually cared about what she had to say. She wanted to save enough money to buy nice things, she admitted, things she'd never had before. She wanted dresses that fit properly and weren't mended, shoes that didn't pinch, maybe even a hat with ribbons. She wanted to feel like a proper lady just once. "You're already a proper lady," Benjamin said firmly. "Being a lady has nothing to do with dresses or hats. It's about character, about dignity, about how you treat others. And by that measure, you're more of a lady than half the wealthy women I've ever met." His words stayed with her, warming her from the inside out. She found herself thinking about Benjamin at odd moments, wondering what he was doing at his ranch, hoping he was safe when storms rolled across the prairie. She noticed small things about him, the way his hair curled at his temples when he'd been working in the heat, The way his hands were calloused but gentle when he helped her move heavy furniture. The way his whole face changed when he smiled. Years dropping away to reveal the young man he really was beneath the responsibility he carried. One Saturday evening in late June, Benjamin arrived at the boarding house with an unexpected invitation. There was a dance being held at the town hall to celebrate Independence Day, and he wondered if Lily might like to attend with him. Lily's heart leaped at the question, but doubt quickly followed. "I don't have anything appropriate to wear to a dance," she said, gesturing at her plain work dress. "And I'm not sure I should leave the boarding house. The boarders will need their supper." "The dance doesn't start until 8 o'clock, Benjamin said. "You could serve supper at the usual time and still have time to get ready. As for a dress, I took the liberty of asking Mrs. Chen what size you might wear, and she helped me pick something out from her store. It's in my wagon outside. I hope you don't think me too forward, but I wanted to make sure you had no excuse to say no." He looked almost nervous, this confident cowboy who could handle 1,000 head of cattle and repair a house from foundation to roof. The sight of his nervousness gave Lily courage. "I'd be honored to go to the dance with you," she said quietly. "Thank you for thinking of me." The smile that broke across Benjamin's face was like sunshine, and Lily felt her own lips curving in response. He brought in a package wrapped in brown paper, handing it to her with the kind of care usually reserved for precious cargo. Alone in her room, Lily unwrapped the package with trembling fingers. Inside was a dress of pale blue cotton with tiny white flowers printed on it. It had a fitted bodice, long sleeves with buttons at the cuffs, and a full skirt that would sway when she walked. There was also a white ribbon that could be used as a belt or hair decoration, and a pair of white gloves that were simple but elegant. It was the most beautiful thing Lily had ever owned. She tried it on and found that it fit perfectly, hugging her waist and falling to just above her ankles in the current style. She twisted in front of the small mirror on her dresser, hardly recognizing the young woman who stared back at her. In this dress, she didn't look like a saloon floor scrubber or even a boarding house manager. She looked like someone who mattered, someone with worth and dignity. That evening, Lily served supper to the boarders in record time, then rushed to her room to prepare for the dance. She heated water and washed thoroughly, then put on her new dress and brushed her hair until it shone. She'd never been particularly vain about her appearance, but tonight she wanted to look her best. She pinned her hair up in a style she'd seen on some of the wealthier women in town, leaving a few curls loose to frame her face, and tied the white ribbon around her waist. Benjamin arrived at 8 o'clock precisely, and when Lily opened the door, his eyes widened. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice slightly rough. "That dress is perfect on you." "Thank you for it," Lily said, feeling shy suddenly. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," Benjamin replied. He offered his arm, and Lily took it, feeling the solid strength of him beneath the fabric of his jacket. The walk to the town hall took only 10 minutes, but Lily treasured every second of it. The evening air was warm and sweet with the scent of prairie flowers, and the sky was turning pink and gold with the sunset. Benjamin talked easily, pointing out constellations that were just beginning to appear, telling her about a new calf that had been born at his ranch that morning. The town hall was decorated with red, white, and blue bunting, and lanterns hung from the rafters, casting a warm glow over the crowd. A 4-piece band was set up in the corner, playing a lively tune, and couples were already spinning around the dance floor. Lily recognized several of her boarders among the crowd, and they waved at her with friendly smiles. "I should warn you," Benjamin said, leaning close so she could hear him over the music. "I'm not the best dancer, but I promise to try not to step on your feet too often." "I've never been to a real dance before," Lily admitted, "so I probably won't even notice if you do." Benjamin led her onto the dance floor, and they attempted a simple waltz. He was better than he'd claimed, or perhaps Lily was too happy to care about any missteps. They moved together around the floor, and Lily felt like she was floating, like all the hardship and loneliness of the past 2 years had been washed away by this one perfect moment. Between dances, Benjamin introduced her to people he knew, ranchers and merchants and their families, and he introduced her not as his employee but as his friend, with a pride in his voice that made Lily's heart swell. People were kind to her, welcoming her into their conversations, complimenting her dress and asking about the boarding house. As the evening wore on, Lily found herself relaxing completely, laughing at jokes, joining in the conversations, feeling like she belonged here in a way she'd never felt anywhere before. And through it all, she was aware of Benjamin beside her, his presence steady and comforting, his attention focused on her in a way that made her feel like the most important person in the room. When the band played a slower song, Benjamin pulled her close for another waltz. "Are you having a good time?" he asked, his breath warm against her ear. "The best time," Lily replied honestly. "Thank you for bringing me. Thank you for everything, really. You've given me back my life, Benjamin. I don't know if I've ever properly thanked you for that." "You thank me every day with your hard work and dedication," Benjamin said. "But if we're being honest, I should be thanking you. The boarding house wouldn't be half as successful without you. You've made it into something special, something more than I ever could have managed on my own." They danced in silence for a moment, and then Benjamin said quietly, "Lily, I hope you know that I didn't offer you that job just because I needed help with the boarding house. From the moment I saw you scrubbing that saloon floor, refusing to give up your dignity even in the worst circumstances, I knew you were someone special, someone strong and good and worth knowing." Lily's breath caught in her throat. "Benjamin, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "I just wanted you to know. I wanted you to know that I see you, really see you, and I think you're remarkable." The song ended, but they stood still in the middle of the dance floor for a long moment, looking at each other. Lily could feel her heart pounding, could feel something shifting between them, something that had been building since that first night in the saloon. "I think you're remarkable too," she finally whispered. Benjamin smiled, a slow, genuine smile that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. "Then we have excellent judgment, both of us." The spell was broken by the band striking up another lively tune, and they moved off the dance floor to get some punch. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of music and laughter and stolen glances. When it was time to leave, Benjamin walked Lily home slowly, as if neither of them wanted the night to end. At the door of the boarding house, Benjamin took both of Lily's hands in his. "I know I'm probably moving too fast," he said. "And I know that courting is usually a longer process. But I'm a direct man, Lily, and I believe in being honest about my feelings. I care for you deeply, more deeply than I've ever cared for anyone. I'd like permission to court you properly, with the intention of one day asking for your hand in marriage if you'd be amenable to that." Lily felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears, overwhelmed tears. 6 months ago, she'd been on her knees scrubbing saloon floors, believing that was all life would ever offer her. Now she stood in a beautiful dress with a good man asking to court her, and the future suddenly seemed bright with possibility. "Yes," she said, her voice steady despite the emotions roiling inside her. "Yes, Benjamin, I'd be very amenable to that." He raised her hands to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently, a gesture so sweet and old-fashioned that it made Lily's heart ache. "Then I'm the luckiest man in South Dakota," he said, Sleep well, Lily. I'll see you tomorrow." The summer passed in a haze of happiness. Benjamin courted Lily with old-fashioned propriety, bringing her flowers from the prairie, taking her on picnics by the Big Sioux River, sitting with her on the porch in the evenings after the boarders had gone to bed, talking about everything and nothing. They discovered they had similar views on most topics, similar hopes for the future, similar values about what mattered in life. The boarding house continued to thrive under Lily's management. She hired a young woman named Mary to help with the cooking and cleaning, which freed up more time for Lily to spend with Benjamin. The boarders came and went, some staying for weeks, others for months, and they all seemed to appreciate the warm, welcoming atmosphere Lily had created. Benjamin's ranch was doing well too. He'd expanded his herd and hired 2 additional ranch hands to help with the work. He talked about buying the land adjacent to his current property, about building a bigger house one day, about a future that increasingly seemed to include Lily in every plan. As summer turned to autumn, Lily knew she was in love. She loved the way Benjamin listened when she talked, really listened as if her words were precious. She loved his steady reliability, the way he always did what he said he would do. She loved his kindness to animals and people alike, his sense of humor, his intelligence, his quiet strength. She loved the way he looked at her, like she was something wonderful and unexpected that had walked into his life. On a cool evening in late September, Benjamin asked Lily to take a walk with him. They strolled through the quiet streets of Sioux Falls, past houses where families were sitting down to supper, past the general store and the church and the saloon where Lily used to work. Benjamin led her to a spot by the river where the cottonwood trees were turning gold with the changing season. "Lily," he said, taking her hands in his, "I know we've only been courting for 3 months, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you. I love your strength and your kindness, your determination and your grace. I love the way you make me laugh and the way you make me think. I love who I am when I'm with you, and I can't imagine my future without you in it." He dropped to one knee, and Lily felt her breath leave her body in a rush. "Lily Emerson, would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife? I promise to love you and cherish you, to provide for you and protect you, to be your partner in all things for as long as we both shall live." "Yes," Lily said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, Benjamin, 1,000 times yes." He stood and pulled her into his arms, and they held each other as the sun set over the prairie, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Lily had never felt so safe, so cherished, so completely happy. They were married 6 weeks later in the small church on Main Street, with half the town in attendance. Lily wore a new dress of cream-colored silk that Benjamin had ordered from Omaha, and she carried a bouquet of late-blooming prairie flowers. Benjamin wore his best suit, and he looked so handsome that Lily's heart skipped a beat when she saw him waiting for her at the altar. Mrs. Chen served as Lily's attendant, and one of Benjamin's ranch hands stood up with him. The ceremony was simple but beautiful, with the minister speaking about love and commitment and the sanctity of marriage. When Benjamin slipped the gold ring onto Lily's finger, she felt the weight of it like a promise, solid and real and forever. The reception was held at the boarding house, which Lily had decorated with fall flowers and ribbons. The boarders had all pitched in to help prepare food, and there was music and dancing and so much joy that the room seemed to overflow with it. Lily danced with her new husband, with several of the boarders, with Mr. Patterson, who'd become almost like a grandfather to her in the months he'd been staying at the house. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Benjamin pulled Lily aside. "Are you ready to see your wedding present?" he asked with a mysterious smile. "I thought the ring was my wedding present," Lily said, holding up her hand to admire the simple gold band. "That's just part of it," Benjamin said. "Come on." He led her outside to his wagon, which was loaded with Lily's trunk and several other items she recognized from her room. "I thought we'd spend tonight at the ranch," he explained. "Our ranch now. I've been preparing the house for weeks, getting it ready for you. I wanted it to be perfect." The drive to the ranch took almost an hour, but Lily didn't mind. She sat close to Benjamin on the wagon seat, his arm around her shoulders, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. When they finally arrived, Benjamin lifted her down from the wagon and insisted on carrying her over the threshold, even though she laughed and protested that it was silly. The ranch house was bigger than Lily had expected, a solid 2-story structure with a large main room, a kitchen, and several bedrooms. Benjamin had clearly spent considerable time preparing for her arrival. Fresh curtains hung at the windows, colorful rag rugs covered the floors, and there were little touches everywhere that spoke of his care and thoughtfulness. "This is the main room," he said, giving her a tour. "I thought we could use it as a sitting room in the evenings. The kitchen is through here, and I've stocked it with everything you should need. Our bedroom is upstairs, and there are 2 other bedrooms that we can use for the future." He looked almost embarrassed, and Lily reached up to touch his cheek. "It's perfect, Benjamin, all of it." "I love it. I was hoping you'd say that," he said, relief evident in his voice. "Because I want you to feel at home here, Lily. I want you to be happy." "I am happy," Lily assured him. "Happier than I ever thought possible." That night, in the bedroom Benjamin had prepared with such care, Lily and Benjamin began their married life together. He was gentle and patient, treating her with a tenderness that made her fall even more deeply in love with him. Afterward, lying in his arms with her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, Lily marveled at how much her life had changed in just 6 months. "What are you thinking about?" Benjamin asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "I was thinking about the night you walked into the Silver Dollar," Lily said. "If someone had told me then that 6 months later I'd be married to you, living in this beautiful house, I would have thought they were crazy." "Best decision I ever made, walking into that saloon," Benjamin said. "Best decision I ever made, offering you that job." "Best decision I ever made, taking it," Lily replied. They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, and when Lily woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of birds singing outside, she felt a peace so profound it almost hurt. The first months of marriage were an adjustment. Lily had to learn to manage the ranch house while still overseeing the boarding house in town. Benjamin had promoted Mary to head manager of the boarding house, but Lily still went into town 3 times a week to check on things and handle the accounts. The rest of the time, she threw herself into making the ranch house into a home. She planted a vegetable garden behind the house, learning from books and from the advice of neighboring ranch wives. She cooked meals for Benjamin and the ranch hands, hearty fare designed to fuel men doing hard physical labor. She learned to preserve vegetables and fruits for the winter, to churn butter, to bake bread that rose high and golden in the oven. Benjamin was a patient teacher, showing her how to handle the horses, how to read the weather signs, how to prepare for the harsh South Dakota winters. He never made her feel foolish for not knowing things, never implied that she was less capable because she'd grown up in Ohio rather than on the frontier. In turn, Lily brought her own strengths to the marriage. She managed the household accounts with careful efficiency, finding ways to save money without sacrificing quality. She created systems for keeping the house clean and organized, for managing supplies and planning meals. She made the ranch house into a place of warmth and welcome, so that when Benjamin came in from a long day of work, he walked into comfort and peace. Their love deepened as the months passed. They learned each other's rhythms and moods, learned how to communicate without words, learned how to support each other through difficulties, and celebrate victories together. They had disagreements occasionally, as all couples do, but they always worked through them with respect and honesty, never letting the sun go down on their anger. Winter arrived in November with a vengeance, bringing snow and bitter cold that made Lily grateful for the solid walls of the ranch house and the warmth of the cast iron stove. Benjamin spent his days tending to the cattle, making sure they had access to water and enough feed to survive until spring. It was hard, exhausting work, and he came home each evening half frozen and completely spent. Lily made it her mission to make those evenings worth coming home to. She'd have hot water ready for him to wash with, warm food on the table, the fire burning bright and welcoming. She'd rub his sore shoulders and listen to him talk about his day, offering sympathy for setbacks and genuine excitement for successes. And at night, they'd lie together in their warm bed, holding each other against the howling wind outside, grateful for the shelter and for each other. It was during one of those long winter nights that Lily realized her monthly courses were late. She'd been so busy with the demands of ranch life that she hadn't noticed at first. But as the weeks passed and there was still no sign, a hopeful suspicion began to grow. She waited another few weeks to be sure, then made a trip into town to see the doctor. Harrison confirmed what Lily had suspected. She was expecting a baby, due sometime in early summer. Lily left his office in a daze, her hand pressed protectively over her still flat stomach. A baby. She and Benjamin were going to have a baby. She wanted to tell him immediately, but she also wanted to make it special. That evening she cooked his favorite meal, pot roast with potatoes and carrots, and baked an apple pie for dessert. When they'd finished eating and Benjamin was leaning back in his chair with a contented sigh, Lily took a deep breath. "Benjamin, I have something to tell you," she said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "I went to see Dr. Harrison today." Benjamin's expression immediately shifted to concern. "Are you all right? Are you sick?" No, I'm perfectly fine," Lily assured him quickly. "More than fine, actually. Benjamin, we're going to have a baby." For a moment he just stared at her as if he couldn't quite process what she'd said. Then his face broke into the widest smile she'd ever seen, and he was up out of his chair and lifting her into his arms, spinning her around despite her laughing protests. "A baby," he exclaimed. "Lily, we're going to have a baby. When? Are you sure you're all right? What did the doctor say? Do you need to rest? Should you be doing all the work you've been doing?" Lily laughed at his barrage of questions. "I'm due in early June. Dr. Harrison says I'm perfectly healthy and that I can continue with my normal activities as long as I feel up to it. I'm fine, Benjamin, truly." He set her down carefully as if she might break, then knelt and pressed his ear against her stomach. "Hello in there, little one," he said softly. "This is your father. I can't wait to meet you." Lily felt tears prick her eyes at the tenderness in his voice. She ran her fingers through his hair, marveling again at her good fortune. This man, this wonderful man, was her husband and the father of her child. The winter suddenly seemed shorter, the spring more welcome than ever before. As Lily's belly grew, Benjamin became increasingly protective, insisting that she rest more, that she let him handle the heavier chores. The ranch hands, when they found out about the baby, treated Lily like precious china, rushing to carry anything heavy for her, pulling out her chair at meals, asking constantly if she needed anything. Lily found it both amusing and touching. She felt fine, better than fine actually. The baby seemed to give her new energy and purpose. She spent the spring sewing tiny clothes and blankets, preparing the smallest bedroom as a nursery, daydreaming about what the baby would look like, whether they'd have Benjamin's blue eyes or her darker ones. Mary came out from town several times to help with preparations, bringing news from the boarding house and gifts for the baby that the boarders had sent. Mr. Patterson, who'd become a permanent resident, sent a beautifully carved wooden cradle that he'd made himself. Lily cried when she saw it, touched by the kindness of this man who'd become like family to her. In late May, as her due date approached, Lily's mother-in-law-to-be arrived from Texas. Benjamin had written to his mother months ago, and she'd made the long journey north to be there for the birth of her first grandchild. Helen Lawson was a warm, capable woman in her late 40s who took charge of the household with cheerful efficiency, insisting that Lily rest and let herself be pampered for a change. Lily liked Helen immediately. She had Benjamin's blue eyes and his kind smile, and she told wonderful stories about Benjamin as a child that made him blush and Lily laugh. Having another woman in the house was comforting, especially as Lily grew more nervous about the approaching birth. On a warm June morning, Lily woke to the first pains of labor. Helen, who'd helped deliver dozens of babies in her time, recognized the signs immediately and sent one of the ranch hands to fetch Dr. Harrison while she helped Lily prepare. Benjamin was beside himself with worry, pacing the floor and asking every 5 minutes if there was anything he could do. "You can stay calm," Helen told her son firmly. "Your wife needs you to be strong right now, not falling apart like a scared rabbit." The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the day and into the night. Lily had never experienced pain like this, pain that came in waves and seemed to tear her apart from the inside. But Helen was there, holding her hand and coaching her through each contraction, and Dr. Harrison was calm and professional, assuring her that everything was progressing normally. Benjamin stayed with her the entire time, despite Helen's suggestion that he might want to wait downstairs, as many husbands did. He held Lily's other hand, wiped the sweat from her forehead, whispered words of encouragement and love. His presence gave her strength when she felt like she couldn't go on. Finally, just before dawn, their son was born, coming into the world with a lusty cry that announced his arrival to everyone within earshot. Dr. Harrison placed the baby on Lily's chest, and she looked down at the tiny, perfect face and felt a love so overwhelming it took her breath away. "He's beautiful," she whispered, touching one tiny hand with her finger. The baby's fingers curled around hers, gripping tight, and Lily felt tears stream down her face. "He's perfect," Benjamin said, his own voice thick with emotion. "Just like his mother." They named him Thomas James Lawson, after both of his grandfathers. Tommy, as they quickly began calling him, had Benjamin's blue eyes and a shock of dark hair that stood straight up no matter how many times Lily tried to smooth it down. He was a good baby, healthy and strong, with a loud voice when he was hungry but content and peaceful when he was fed and clean. Helen stayed for a month after Tommy's birth, helping Lily adjust to motherhood, teaching her how to nurse the baby, how to soothe him when he was fussy, how to manage on very little sleep. Lily was grateful for her help and guidance, and she was genuinely sad when the day came for Helen to return to Texas. "You're a wonderful mother," Helen told Lily as they said goodbye, "and you've made my son happier than I've ever seen him. Thank you for that, Lily. Thank you for loving him and for giving me this beautiful grandson." "Thank you for raising such a good man," Lily replied, hugging her mother-in-law tight. "Please come back and visit us often." "Try to keep me away," Helen said with a smile. The summer passed in a blur of sleepless nights and endless diaper changes. but also moments of pure joy as Lily and Benjamin watched their son grow and change. Tommy was alert and curious, his eyes tracking movement around the room, his little face breaking into what they swore were genuine smiles when he saw his parents. Benjamin was a devoted father, helping with Tommy whenever he could, walking the floor with him at night when he was fussy, talking to him constantly even though the baby was far too young to understand. Lily would watch her husband with their son and feel her heart swell with love for both of them. As autumn arrived and Tommy grew stronger and more active, Lily began to think about the future. The boarding house was doing well under Mary's management, well enough that it required very little oversight from Lily anymore. The ranch was thriving, Benjamin's careful management paying off in healthy cattle and good profits. They had built a good life together, a stable life, and Lily wanted to give back some of what she'd been given. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset while Tommy slept in his cradle, Lily shared an idea she'd been pondering. "Benjamin, I've been thinking. You know how hard it was for me when I first came to Sioux Falls, how desperate I was for any kind of opportunity. I keep thinking about other young women who might be in similar situations, who need help but have no one to turn to." "What are you suggesting?" Benjamin asked, his attention focused on her. "What if we converted one wing of the boarding house into a sort of refuge? A place where young women in difficult circumstances could stay while they get back on their feet. We could offer them room and board in exchange for work, help them learn skills that would allow them to find decent employment. We have the space, and Mary is more than capable of managing the regular boarding house operations." Benjamin was quiet for a moment, considering. Then he nodded slowly. "I think it's a wonderful idea. It's exactly the kind of thing my father would have approved of, using what we have to help others. But it would be a lot of work for you, Lily. Are you sure you want to take that on with Tommy so young?" "I think it's important," Lily said. "I keep thinking about where I'd be if you hadn't offered me that job. I want to offer the same kind of hope to other women. We don't have to make it huge, maybe just 3 or 4 women at a time, but I think we could make a real difference." "Then let's do it," Benjamin said, reaching for her hand. "We'll talk to Mary and see what she thinks, maybe consult with Reverend Matthews about how to identify women who would benefit from the program. I'm proud of you, Lily. This is a beautiful idea." Over the next few months, they put the plan into action. Mary was enthusiastic about the project, and with her help, they converted the 3rd floor of the boarding house into a separate living area with its own entrance. Reverend Matthews agreed to help identify young women in need, and by December, they had their first 3 residents. There was Sarah, a 19-year-old widow whose husband had died in a mining accident, leaving her with no money and no family. There was Catherine, who'd run away from an abusive home back east and made it as far as Sioux Falls before her money ran out. And there was young Emma, barely 18, who'd been abandoned by the man who'd promised to marry her. Lily worked with each of them individually, helping them develop skills and confidence. Sarah proved to be an excellent seamstress, and Lily helped her set up a small dressmaking business. Catherine had a talent for numbers, and Lily arranged for her to apprentice with the accountant in town. Emma loved working with children, and Lily connected her with several families who needed governesses or nannies. Within 6 months, all 3 young women had found stable employment and their own housing, and 3 more had taken their places. Word spread about the refuge, and soon Lily was receiving letters from all over the territory from women seeking help. She couldn't accommodate them all, but she helped as many as she could, and each success story felt like a validation of the path her own life had taken. The years passed quickly, marked by the changing seasons and the milestones of family life. Tommy grew into a bright, energetic toddler who loved following his father around the ranch and helping with small chores. When he was 3, Lily gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Rose Helen after the wild prairie roses Lily loved and Benjamin's mother. Rose was different from Tommy, quieter and more thoughtful, with Lily's darker eyes and a serious expression that made her look like a tiny philosopher. She adored her older brother, following him everywhere, and Tommy was surprisingly patient with her, explaining things in his childish way and protecting her fiercely from any perceived threat. The refuge for women continued to operate successfully, now expanded to accommodate up to 6 women at a time. Lily had trained 2 assistants to help manage the program, which allowed her to focus more time on her growing family while still maintaining oversight. The boarding house itself remained profitable, providing a steady income stream that helped fund both the ranch and the refuge. When Tommy was 5 and Rose 2, Lily gave birth to twin boys, Matthew and Marcus. The twins were a handful, energetic and mischievous, keeping both parents constantly on their toes. Benjamin hired additional help at the ranch so he could spend more time with his growing family, and the house rang with the sound of children's laughter and occasional tears. Life was busy and sometimes chaotic, but it was also rich with love and purpose. Lily would sometimes pause in the middle of her daily tasks, looking around at her children playing, her husband working, her comfortable home, and marvel at how far she'd come from that saloon floor in Sioux Falls. One evening, when the children were all in bed and Benjamin and Lily were enjoying a rare moment of quiet on the porch, Benjamin said, "Do you ever regret it? Marrying me, taking on all this responsibility, the children and the ranch and the refuge?" Lily looked at him in surprise. "Regret it? Benjamin, how could you even ask that? These past years with you have been the happiest of my life. You gave me everything I never knew I wanted." "I just worry sometimes that it's too much," Benjamin admitted. "You work so hard, managing the household and the children and still overseeing the refuge. I don't want you to feel overwhelmed." "I'm not overwhelmed," Lily assured him, taking his hand. "Yes, life is busy, but it's a good busy. Every day I wake up grateful for what we have, for what we've built together. I love our children, I love our home, I love the work we're doing to help other women. And most of all, I love you. None of it feels like a burden when I'm doing it with you." Benjamin pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "I love you too, Lily. More than I can express. You've made my life richer and fuller than I ever imagined it could be." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. The prairie stretched out around them, vast and beautiful, full of both challenges and opportunities. It was the same prairie where Lily had once felt lost and hopeless, but now it felt like home. As the children grew older, Lily involved them in the work of the refuge. Tommy, now 12, would help the visiting women with heavy lifting and basic repairs. Rose, at 9, loved organizing the supplies and had a natural talent for making the new arrivals feel welcome. The 8-year-old twins were still a bit young for serious responsibilities, but they were learning the value of helping others. The refuge had helped over 100 women by now, and Lily kept in touch with many of them. Some had married and started families of their own. Others had become teachers or shop owners or skilled tradeswomen. Several had written to Lily saying that the refuge had saved their lives, given them hope when they had none, and those letters were treasures Lily kept in a special box in her dresser. Benjamin's ranch had grown into one of the most successful in the region. He now owned over 5,000 acres and ran nearly 1,000 head of cattle. He'd built a reputation as a fair employer and a skilled rancher, and other cattlemen often sought his advice. But despite his success, he remained humble and grounded, never forgetting where he'd come from or the values his father had instilled in him. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Benjamin surprised Lily with a trip to Omaha, just the two of them, leaving the children in the care of Helen, who'd come up from Texas for an extended visit. It was Lily's first time in a real city, and she was overwhelmed by the crowds and noise and bustle. But Benjamin showed her the sights with patience and enthusiasm, taking her to restaurants and theaters and shops unlike anything in Sioux Falls. On their last night in the city, over dinner at a fancy hotel restaurant, Benjamin presented Lily with a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a pendant shaped like a prairie rose. "I know I can never fully repay you for all you've given me," Benjamin said, as he fastened it around her neck. "But I want you to know that every day with you is a gift. You took a chance on a cowboy with a crazy idea about a boarding house, and you've turned it into something extraordinary. You've given me 4 beautiful children and a home filled with love. You've touched the lives of countless women through your refuge work. You've made me a better man, Lily. I hope you know that." Lily felt tears streaming down her face, not caring that they were in a public place. "Benjamin, you gave me a chance when I had nothing. You saw worth in me when I couldn't see it in myself. Everything good in my life traces back to that night you walked into the Silver Dollar. You're the best man I've ever known, and I fall more in love with you every single day." They held hands across the table, two people who'd found each other against all odds and built something lasting and beautiful together. The years continued to unfold, bringing both joys and challenges. There were hard winters that tested the ranch's resources and dry summers that made everyone worry about the cattle. There were illnesses that frightened them and accidents that reminded them how fragile life could be. But through it all, Benjamin and Lily faced everything together, their love and partnership growing stronger with each passing year. Tommy grew into a tall, serious young man who loved the ranch and planned to take it over from his father someday. Rose became a teacher, working with the children of the ranch hands and the wider community. The twins, Matthew and Marcus, though different in personality, were inseparable, and both showed an interest in business, talking about opening a mercantile together someday. When Lily was 40, she and Benjamin celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary surrounded by their children, now all young adults, and dozens of women whose lives had been changed by the refuge program. It was a joyous occasion, filled with music and dancing and heartfelt speeches. One of the women who spoke was Sarah, the first resident of the refuge, who'd gone on to become a successful dressmaker with shops in 3 different towns. 20 years ago, Mrs. Lawson gave me hope when I had none, Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. She taught me that my circumstances didn't define me, that I had value and skills worth developing. She did that not just for me, but for hundreds of other women. The ripple effects of her kindness extend far beyond what we can measure. Some of us went on to help other women in turn, creating our own small refuges and programs. Mrs. Lawson planted seeds of hope and dignity that continue to grow and spread. We're all here today to say thank you and to celebrate the life she and Mr. Lawson have built together. The applause was thunderous, and Lily found herself crying again, overwhelmed by the love and gratitude in the room. Benjamin wrapped his arm around her and she leaned into him, this man who'd been her partner and her love for 2 decades. "Did you ever imagine this?" she whispered to him. "That night in the saloon, did you ever imagine all of this?" "I imagined finding someone special," Benjamin replied. "I imagined building something that mattered. But this exceeds anything I could have dreamed. We've been blessed, Lily, blessed beyond measure." As Lily approached her 50th birthday, she began to slow down slightly. letting younger women take over more of the day-to-day operations of the refuge. But she remained involved, offering guidance and support, sharing her story with new arrivals to give them hope that their circumstances could change. Tommy had indeed taken over the main operations of the ranch and was running it with the same careful attention and integrity his father had shown. He'd married a sweet young woman from a neighboring ranch, and they'd already given Benjamin and Lily 2 grandchildren, with another on the way. Rose had married as well, to the accountant she'd once apprenticed Catherine with, and they were expecting their first child. The twins had opened their mercantile as planned, and it was thriving, serving not just Sioux Falls but the surrounding communities as well. Sioux Falls itself had grown considerably over the years. What had once been a small frontier town was now a bustling city of several thousand people, with paved streets and electric lights, and all the amenities of modern civilization. The Silver Dollar Saloon was long gone, torn down to make way for a bank, but Lily sometimes walked past the spot where it had stood and remembered the young woman she'd been, scrubbing floors and dreaming of something better. Benjamin had kept his promise to build a bigger house, though they'd done it gradually over the years, adding rooms as their family grew. The original ranch house was now dwarfed by additions, but Lily had insisted they keep the bedroom where they'd spent their first night together as husband and wife. It was their private sanctuary, filled with memories and love. On a warm June evening in 1908, exactly 30 years after Benjamin had walked into the Silver Dollar Saloon, Lily and Benjamin sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sunset paint the prairie in shades of gold and rose. They were both in their early 50s now, their hair touched with gray, their faces marked by the lines of a life well lived. 30 years, Lily said softly. Can you believe it's been 30 years? Best 30 years of my life, Benjamin replied, reaching for her hand. His hands were more gnarled now, scarred and weathered from decades of ranch work, but they were still strong and warm. Mine too, Lily agreed. Sometimes I still can't believe how lucky we've been, how lucky I've been. It wasn't luck, Benjamin said. It was choice. You chose to take a chance on a better life. You chose to work hard and never give up. You chose to help others once you had the means to do so. Everything we have, everything we've built, came from the choices we made together. Lily thought about that, about the choices that had led her to this moment. The choice to leave Ohio and head west. The choice to keep her dignity even when she was scrubbing saloon floors. The choice to say yes when Benjamin offered her a job. The choice to trust him, to love him, to build a life with him. Every choice had led to this, to a life richer and fuller than she'd ever imagined possible. Their children came for dinner that evening, bringing the grandchildren and filling the house with noise and laughter. The table had to be extended to its full length to accommodate everyone, and Lily looked around at the faces of her family, young and old, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. After dinner, when the children were playing outside under the watchful eyes of their parents, Benjamin stood and tapped his glass to get everyone's attention. I want to say a few words, he announced. 30 years ago today, I walked into a saloon in Sioux Falls looking for someone to help me run a boarding house. What I found was so much more than that. I found Lily, a young woman with nothing but her dignity and her determination. I watched her take the opportunity I offered and turn it into something extraordinary. She didn't just run a boarding house. She created a home for dozens of boarders over the years. She didn't just accept the life I offered. She built on it, creating the refuge program that's helped hundreds of women change their lives. He paused, his voice growing thick with emotion. But more than any of that, she gave me a family. She gave me 4 incredible children who have grown into amazing adults. She gave me love and partnership and a home that's the envy of everyone who visits. She took a lonely cowboy with big dreams and made those dreams come true in ways he never expected. Lily, I love you more today than I did 30 years ago, and that's saying something because I loved you pretty powerfully even then. Here's to 30 more years together. Everyone raised their glasses, and Lily wiped away tears, overwhelmed by the love in the room. When she could trust her voice, she stood as well. "Benjamin Lawson, you saved my life," she said simply. "I was drowning in hopelessness when you threw me a lifeline. You didn't just offer me a job, you offered me respect and dignity and the chance to be more than my circumstances. You saw potential in me that I couldn't see in myself. Every good thing in my life flows from that first act of kindness. I love you with everything I am, and I thank God every day that you walked into that saloon 30 years ago." The evening continued with music and stories and laughter. The grandchildren fell asleep in various laps and were carried off to beds. The adult children eventually headed home to their own houses, leaving Benjamin and Lily alone once more. They walked through the quiet house, Benjamin's arm around Lily's shoulders, checking that doors were locked and lamps were out. In their bedroom, they prepared for sleep with the comfortable routine of 3 decades together. As they lay in bed, Lily's head resting on Benjamin's shoulder, she said quietly, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't come into the saloon that night, if you'd found someone else to help with the boarding house?" "Never," Benjamin said firmly. "I believe some things are meant to be. We were meant to find each other, Lily. I'm as certain of that as I am of anything in this world." "I believe that too," Lily whispered. "I believe God led you to me that night, gave us both exactly what we needed." They drifted off to sleep in each other's arms, 2 people who'd found love in the most unexpected place and built a life that had touched countless others. The refuge program continued for many more years, even after Lily's death at the age of 72. Benjamin had insisted on endowing it permanently in her memory, ensuring that it would continue helping women long after both of them were gone. The Lawson Family Refuge, as it came to be known, helped thousands of women over the decades, providing them with the same hope and opportunity that Lily had received all those years ago. Benjamin lived to be 80, spending his final years surrounded by his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. He never remarried after Lily's death, saying that he'd had the great love of his life and didn't need another. He spent his time telling stories to the younger generations about their grandmother, about the brave young woman who'd been scrubbing floors when he found her, about how she transformed not just her own life, but the lives of countless others. The ranch stayed in the family for generations, as did the commitment to helping others. Tommy's descendants continued to run it with the same integrity and care that Benjamin had shown. The boarding house eventually became a museum, with one wing dedicated to telling the story of the refuge program and the women it had helped. In Sioux Falls, which had grown into a thriving city, there was a park named after Lily Emerson Lawson, with a statue showing a young woman rising from a kneeling position, her face turned toward the sky. The plaque at the base read, "In memory of Lily Emerson Lawson, who showed us that dignity is not given by circumstances but chosen by the individual, and that one person's kindness can change the world." The story of the cowboy who'd offered a saloon girl a clean start and the life they'd built together became local legend, told and retold to inspire new generations. It was a reminder that love could be found in the most unexpected places, that one moment of kindness could ripple out to touch thousands of lives, and that the measure of a life well lived wasn't in wealth or status, but in the love shared and the good done for others. Years after both Benjamin and Lily had passed, their great-great-granddaughter stood in the museum that had once been the boarding house, reading the letters and documents that told their story. She looked at the photographs, faded now with age, showing a handsome cowboy and a beautiful woman with strength in her eyes. She read Lily's journals, where she'd written about that first night when Benjamin had offered her a job, about falling in love with him, about the joy of building a life together. As she left the museum, walking through the streets of modern Sioux Falls with its cars and computers and technologies that Benjamin and Lily could never have imagined, she carried with her the legacy they'd left behind. It wasn't just in the refuge program or the ranch or the family they'd created. It was in the lesson that one person's choice to show kindness, to offer dignity, to see potential in another human being, could change everything. And somewhere in whatever lies beyond this life, Benjamin and Lily were together still, their love story complete, their legacy secure, their lives a testament to the transformative power of kindness, dignity, and love.